Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And... oh. Armin's back. Yay. Yes, this is album number 6 from Armin van Buuren, Embrace. If you watched my review of BT's electronic opus, you'll know I'm not exactly a huge Armin van Buuren fan. To be absolutely fair, trying to compare any other trance producer to BT makes them look like an untalented hack. And I don't think Armin is an untalented hack. They're certainly far worse in the genre. What I do think Armin is, however, is stuck in a big fat rut. In fact, let me make my thoughts clear on his discography so far. These all sound the same. That may be kind of harsh, but really, Armin is infuriatingly predictable. Like, I said Avicii was predictable, but he's got nothing on Armin. Especially since that new Avicii album wasn't actually that predictable at all. I was planning on skipping a review of this album altogether, but I just wanted to get my thoughts on Armin down for the record. Now, unlike some of his contemporaries, I will admit at least he isn't actually that bad a producer. Once upon a time, the formula he used actually worked perfectly fine. His style of commercial trance is very spacious, big, and impressive sounding, and he can definitely hit that emotional sweet spot if I happen to be in the mood for trance music. But there's two problems. For one thing, if I'm not in the mood, he's just really boring and falls in the background without leaving any impression on me. And the other problem is that over the course of 10 years and 5 albums, he's brought absolutely no new twists to the formula at all. He is the poster boy for formula abuse. In that way, he's actually kind of like the opposite of Avicii. He's got a good production style, but he never takes any risks. Though I can't say I disliked any of his albums, he got increasingly boring and difficult for me to care about as his formula wore thin. In theory, I could pick up pretty much any Armin album and get largely the same experience. Though if I had to recommend one, I'd probably go with Mirage, his 4th album, with his first album 76 in 2nd place. Mirage mostly wins because of The Silent Hearts, because, you know, adding BT to anything equals instant win, even if you disappointingly don't let him co-produce the track. That and the album has a great intro, and multiple songs that I actually remembered after listening to it. 76 is in 2nd because it has the most instrumentals, and therefore is the best showcase for Armin's actual production talent. Though 90% of Armin's trance work is, well, vocal trance. Even unlike certain other producers, he is perfectly capable of carrying a track by himself, but he usually doesn't bother. Well, that brings us to now. I saw a lot of iTunes reviewers complaining that this album wasn't the same Armin they knew and loved, like it was a sellout and that kind of thing. And quite frankly, that actually got me kind of excited. Gave me just that little glimmer of hope that maybe this new Armin album won't sound exactly like all the others he's put out. Has he finally broken his streak? After listening myself, sort of, but for the most part, no, not really. I will admit it does sound a little different from his usual style. He's been incorporating elements from different genres, using different instruments like horns and guitars. Also seems to be changing up his singers more as well. A couple of songs have some singers that have like more of a southern twang to their voice, giving it a little more of a country-ish feel. At first I thought, oh boy, that's not a good sign, he's jumping on the Avicii bandwagon, but that's not entirely accurate. Though it does include some singers that sound like they're country singers, and uses more different instruments. Let's face it, this is exactly the same Armin van Buuren we've come to know for the past decade. I was inclined to compare this album more to Tiesto's A Town Called Paradise album, which despite being a radical shift towards the commercial and, yes, an utter sellout, wasn't actually that bad. But that's not really a fair comparison either, because Tiesto actually changed his production style for A Town Called Paradise. Armin didn't. He's including new instruments, he's trying slightly different styles, but at his core, it's really obvious he has not changed in the slightest. And let's face it, these new styles aren't exactly anything we haven't heard out of him before either. Just look at earlier songs like This Is What It Feels Like or Virtual Friend. The question is Embrace actually a good album? Well, my current least favorite Armin album is his second one, Shivers, which left absolutely no impression on me at all, and I barely remember anything from it at all. This album, I will admit, had a couple of decent moments that were actually pretty memorable. Like the title track, Embrace. Despite being structured in exactly the way you'd expect it to, it surprised me more than a few times thanks to its horn solos or sax solos or whatever. And the drops kept changing, and it's actually a pretty interesting track for Armin. And there was Face of Summer. I like that one because it was actually catchy and got stuck in my head, not something that happens often with Armin. And Caught in the Slipstream was another one I liked. Now, that song is kind of a little Avicii-ish, in that its build-up and its drop do not match up at all. However, unlike the usual from Avicii, the drop is amazing. And then there's Looking for Your Name. That's just a straight piano ballad with some strings, closing out the album on a softer, warmer, more satisfying note. Although it does kind of suffer from Beautiful Now syndrome in that the first line of the lyrics is a little distracting.
Baby, can I hold your skin?
That just sounds wrong. I'm glad Armin actually gave the album a memorable ending though. But besides that, Armin adds nothing to the conversation he didn't already. I suppose a couple of songs did have a slight Avicii feel to them, but weren't really irritating enough to elicit more of a reaction. I didn't expect Armin to change at all, and big surprise, he didn't. I'd go into more detail, but I really don't have much else to say about it. I will say I definitely appreciate Armin's effort to add a little more variety into this album than usual, and I think the fact that he did that makes this one of his best albums to date. But to be perfectly honest, I found it to just mostly be forgettable, as I tend to find Armin van Buuren albums to be. But you know, it's the thought that counts, and as usual, nothing on this album was an outright failure, I just didn't find it particularly interesting. Armin fans can obviously enjoy it in the same way they always have, while I can continue to make fun of Armin for being a formula abuser. Overall, I'm feeling a solid 7 out of 10. Favorite tracks: Embrace, Face of Summer, Caught in the Slipstream, and I guess Looking for Your Name as well. Least favorite track? I really don't care. Another You, I guess. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with me. In fact, if you do, I'd like to hear what you guys think of Armin van Buuren or this album by telling me in the comments. Or if you have any requests for what I should review in the future, also tell me about that in the comments. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.